This is the Asus GL502VM, and I'm going to refer to it as the Asus Strix 15. This is one of a handful of GTX 1060 based laptops that we've tested. This is the Asus Strix 15. It happens to hit underneath that magical $1,500 mark, but you have to have a few compromises to hit that price point. And besides being at the lower end of the Pascal GPU lineup, this laptop for $1,400 also lacks an SSD. And it struggles to play some of the games that we've tested at the highest levels. It does, however, have a Core i7 6700HQ CPU, 16 gigs of RAM, and has a full HD 15-inch G-Sync display. Let's take a closer look. Let's start from the top, and we have a black brushed metal finish that's pretty minimalist, but it has a few features that are the typical gamer aesthetic, like the ROG logo and accents on the side in vibrant neon orange. These light up when the system is powered on. Moving inside, you'll find the same black and orange color scheme, but the surface is more of a brushed plastic instead. You'll also notice the WASD keys are orange with black print, and these definitely stand out. The display hinge gives you about 125 degrees of movement, and it's pretty smooth. Over here you have two speakers in the form of orange slits on either side of the chassis near the hinge. And the sound quality, like most of these laptops, is just okay. Let's talk about I/O. On the left, you've got a USB 3.0 port, Ethernet, mini display, and HDMI. There's also a USB 3.1 Type-C port, but it lacks Thunderbolt 3 support, and it can't provide display output. Over here on the right are two USB 3.0 ports, a 3-in-1 card reader, and audio in and out. We've got some vents around the back and on the bottom for heat dissipation. Moving back inside, you've got the LED backlit keyboard, and this has anti-ghosting scissor switch keys. We pretty much found it comfortable to type on, and there are some backlight levels, but not too many options here, including for color choices. Let's take a look inside. Here we've got a couple of heat pipes, and they're making contact with the GPU and CPU heat sinks. And you've got two fans here for dispelling the hot air. Over here you've got the empty M.2 SSD slot. Really nothing out of the ordinary here. The laptop weighs about 5 pounds, and it's less than an inch thick. Before we get to some of our gaming benchmarks, it's useful to go through a few of the synthetic tests that we run. And I want to call out a couple here where the Strix 15 stands out and falls down a little bit. First, I want to talk about Cinebench because the Strix 15 outperforms all of the other 1060 based gaming laptops, and it even beats out the Gigabyte 1070 based laptop in OpenGL shading. Now the Strix 15 does well in our CompuBench tests, but the margins between all of the laptops are pretty tight. We run all of our gaming laptops through a series of 11 gaming benchmarks, and we tune all of these to the highest level detail presets, and we crank up all the effects to see what's going to bring these monsters to their knees. For the Asus Strix 15, I want to call out a few particular games where it does well and where it doesn't do so well. First of all, Ashes is a really demanding game, and none of the laptops we've tested have fared well. But you can see here that the Asus Strix is beaten by another 1060 laptop, the MSI Leopard Pro. But it's only by a small margin, and neither of these really play at palatable game frame rates. In games like Dirt Rally and the punishing Grand Theft Auto, the Strix 15 comes out on top. But in GTA, it fails to achieve the performance we'd like to see with all of the detail settings tuned up. One more game here, Grid Autosport, and I want to call this out because the Strix even beats out the 1070 base Gigabyte P37X laptop. And it does so because this game tends to like higher clock rates, and the Gigabyte's 1070 has a lower boost clock frequency than the 1060s in this comparison set. Mostly when we're talking about gaming laptops, performance is what matters most. But there are a few other things that probably factor into your decision. Battery life, for one, because these are portable. Also the quality of the display. And because you're packing a lot of components into a really small chassis, the ability for these gaming laptops to dissipate heat and not inflict some thermal throttling while you're playing the game, that's also very important. So we test these things. We test thermal dissipation in a couple different ways. First, we use this camera, this thermal image camera from Optus. It's called the PI640. We also use the data reported from the GPU diode. Now with the Asus Strix 15, we found the temperature gets a bit hot on the heat sinks, but not so much as to cause any alarm. Cooling is difficult at this size, and Asus basically does an adequate job here. Our battery test is NVIDIA's rundown test, and we play Tomb Raider at 30 frames per second and use the laptop's battery boost feature. Now the Asus laptop performed pretty well here among the 1060s, running for an hour and 49 minutes, a full 20 minutes ahead of its competitors. However, later we tested another 1060-based gaming laptop from MSI, the Stealth Pro, which topped out at an hour and 55 minutes. Still, you're getting close to 2 hours of gaming laptop time on the battery, so that's not too bad. Last, let's talk about display. And for this, we use the SpectraCal C6 colorimeter. And we're looking at various luminance levels, we're looking at contrast ratio, we're looking at gamma and color and grayscale accuracy when we run this test. We like to see contrast ratios of at least 1,000 to 1, and we're not really seeing that here, although the laptop does come close. Still, on most of the metrics that matter, especially color and grayscale accuracy, the Strix, like many of these value-based gaming laptops, struggles quite a bit. It's not the worst, but it's also far from the best. There's really nothing all that incredible about the Asus GL502 VM. It plays some of the less demanding games quite well, but for some of the more demanding games, you're gonna have to turn down a few of the knobs and the dials. But we could say that about any 1060-based gaming laptop. And among those, this one performs the best. So at $1,400, the Asus GL502 VM earns our recommendation as the best value.